line down. We're on 29 block behind as of tonight. That's
pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, sure. About 29 block. I'm saying we should be on Makkos as of now. We should be on Makkos Dafah. So maybe by the end of the night we'll be 27. Okay. Nish Chaf on the base. 40. Nishbu Chutz Beistin. Fourth line, fifth line down. Nishbu Chutz Beistin. They took the oath outside of Beistin. In other words, the Eidim took an oath outside of Beistin that they did not know testimony. They lied. They knew testimony. Yifish Karban, and then they set aside a Karban to atone for their false oath. Brahman, they said, and they said, now we're going to go and deny that we know testimony in Beistin. What do we do with the Karban? Do we say, since they took a false oath outside of court and then subsequently set aside their Karban, do we say that the false oath preceded the Karban and therefore the Karban is a valid Karban? Or because they only are liable for oaths taken within the court, so therefore, even though they already lied once before, but since that lie was outside the court, it's meaningless. And therefore it's going to be Karban on Muchetav. It's as if their sin has preceded their Karban, and therefore as if their Karban preceded the sin, it's a premature Karban, and therefore it's Mechusar Zman, it's lacking the proper requirements, and therefore it's no good, and the Gemara does not resolve this question. Says the Gemara further, Kini Masnisa, this is the way to read our Mishnah. Our Mishnah spoke about Kafar Echad V'Hoida Echad. It said if one of the two witnesses denies he knows testimony, he lies about that. But one of them concedes he knows testimony. HaKofer Chayev, the guy who denies, is liable. Now this is what the Gemara is. That's almost the exact quote. It is actually an exact quote from our Mishnah. So the question is, what is this Gemara adding to our knowledge of the Mishnah, which we not have known? So the Ridbaz explains that what the Mishnah is saying is that it makes no difference the order. When they both deny that they know testimony and they do it in succession, then only the first one to deny is liable to a Karban, because the second one is no longer considered to be valid testimony, since there is no other witness to join with him. He's only one witness, and in order to be considered to be Shavuos Edus, which liable to generate the Chiyuv Karban, it must be that you had somebody else you could have joined with and bring a witness with him, and you denied it. And since you denied subsequent to the other fellow, there's no longer anybody for you to join with, so therefore you're not liable for your false oath. However, in this case, where the other guy concedes, it makes no difference if you're first or second, because as though the other guy is always around. He conceded he knows testimony. So regardless whether you denied before his concession or denied after his concession, you're liable for the Shavuos Eidos, the false Shavuos Eidos, because you're always having somebody with whom they can join the guy who conceded, and therefore, no matter when you made your denial, before or after his confession, you are liable for Shavuos Karban. Now, Rabbi Yossi ever said, Masnisa, concerning the issue, the other issue in our Mishnah, the one I just mentioned momentarily, where they deny in succession. So we said the second guy to deny is exempt, because by the time he's denying, he has nobody to join with, because the first guy already took himself out of the picture. So therefore he's not denying Eidos, to be technical about it, because he's only one witness, and you need two witnesses denying together. So if it's simultaneous, they're both liable. If it's in succession, only the first guy is liable, because that time he denies, the second guy's still around. By the time the second guy denies, he no longer has the first guy around. But that's only, says Rabbi Yossi, Masni, so the Mishnah side where he denied Vuhu, and it should be here instead of the way it says here, the Shardar so changes it, Vula Achar Kedei Dibur Sharishon. It's after the first guy already spoke, and after the first guy, to Tokte Dibor, the amount of time which the first guy has to renege on his statement has already elapsed. Avlim Kafar, but if he was Chayzer, and this is going back to the Gemara, it's afterwards Shiachsra, which we took out. Avim kafar sheni b'toch kedei dibur shel harishon. If the second guy reneged while was still toch the dibur of the first guy's statement, meaning the first guy said, I deny of knowing then testimony. And within the 3 seconds after that, the second guy said, me too. So since Shim Yachsbo Rishon Mekavlim also, since at that point the first fellow could still renege on his denial, because within Toch Dibur you could renege on any statement you made. So this first guy had still renege on his denial, so therefore not Sheni Rishon, the second guy is really like his first, or at least simultaneous with the first guy, because at this point the edus of the first guy has not been completely precluded yet, because as of yet he can still renege on his denial, and therefore the second guy's, the second fellow's denial is considered basically it's a first denial, and therefore he too is liable to a korban shvuah, even though in this case there was succession. What if there are 10 witnesses who one after the other? Those know that Rishon Chai, the first guy, is liable to a shvuah edus. All the other 9 are exempt, which is a tremendous chiddush. More I will explain in a moment. Those who say, which makes more sense from our perspective, the last guy is exempt because when he takes the shvuah, there's nobody else around to join with him. The first 9 guys are all liable. He who says that the first guy is liable only, the bigger chiddush, that only the first guy is liable to the korban shvuah, all the rest of them are exempt. Command them, but that's going like the Vilna, which holds that here the Pnei Moshe switch it around here. The reason given in the second last line should be the reason given here. Command them, it's the reason it goes according to Command them. Edu shabatla mitzasa batla kula. That since they all came as one group, once one of them has lied about it, right, and become a false witness because he lied under oath, so therefore all the rest of the group is rendered invalid, and therefore, since they couldn't testify anyway, so therefore they don't bring a korban on their false oath, on their shvuas edus, because they're rendered unfit. Madam, the other Madam holds Achron Potter. The last one guy is the one who's exempt, but Kul Chavit, all the first 9 guys are liable to korban shvuah. He holds that Command Dharma, the community which holds Tiskaim Edus Bishar. That no, they don't. They're not all organically joined together. Even they came together at once, and therefore, even though the first guy is, even though the first 9 guys, the first 8 guys, have taken themselves out of the picture, nevertheless, the last 2 could stand on their own. So therefore, number 9 is still liable, and so the 10th guy is off too, because he already has nobody else with which to join up with. Rabbi Yosef said, Masdisa Amrakin, our Mishnah indicates, like this Edu Shabbat L'Miktzos, as far the first svara, which is Hayu Shteki Te'edim. How's our Mishnah going? Because our Mishnah says, if there are 2 groups of witnesses, Tapuchav Alfam Rav, Lo Mar, if 2 groups of witnesses, and one takes it out of the picture, then the second one is still liable for Shvuas Eidus. So Lo Mar El Shtayim. So it sounds like, what if one of the first 2 witnesses took himself out? So now you should have either number 2 of this first group of witnesses should still be liable. L'chayra, because he could join together with the second group of witnesses, right? It's true that he lost his partner, but let him partner up with the other 2. So why is he taken out of the picture? Or achas, because within each group, once one of the guys is taken out of the picture by his false oath, so then the other guys fall as well, they can't testify. So therefore, according to our Mishnah, all the rest of the members of that group are exempt from korban shvuah. It's only the members of the other group are liable to korban shvuah. So we see that our Mishnah holds that that once one of the members of the group is knocked out because of his false shvuah status, everybody else is exempt from the korban shvuah, even they lied, because they're already out of the picture. Okay? Halacha doubt. Mashbiya ani aleichem. The litigant says, I make you take an oath that im lo tavu v'toiduni, that if you do not come and testify for me, then you have to take an oath that you don't know testimony for me. Sheyesh biyad, what I want you to testify about. Sheyesh biyad ploni. So-and-so owes me a pikadon as our item for safekeeping. This sumas yad, something which a loan, gezo, a theft which he sold for me. Aveda, a lost item which he found of mine. A shvua she'ein under yodom b'chedus, if they respond with a generic shvua, we don't know any testimony for you, ein achev elachas only liable for one korban shvua. If they, however, specified they were stupid, they said shvua she'ein under yodim l'cha edu sheyesh chabi. We don't know they haven't so and so zans pikadon and tesumes yad, saladu safekeeping and a loan and gezel and theft and aveda and lost items. Chayav and al-klachas, then they're liable for each and everything they lied about. Mashbiani aleichem, I make you take an oath, lo tavu v'tayduni. If you don't come and testify to me, sheish li ploini that so and so owes me, chitim, wheat, soirim, barley, kusmin, rye, shvur, or oats, I think actually. Shavua she'en yodim l'cha edus, and they just answer generically again. We don't know any testimony. Ein achev elachas only liable one korban. However, if they said Shavuos she'ein yodim l'cha edu sheish chabi ploni, they took an oath and they also specified. In this case, they said we don't know anything about your holding against so and so. Chitim, wheat, soerim, barley, v'kusmin, and oats. Chayavim kolachas pachas, so liable for each and every commodity independently. Okay, so the show is take a generic shvua, not a specific shvua. Okay, and how do we know that shvua status only applies to a monetary claim, which is going to have ramifications, significant ramifications? Rabbi Eliezer says, "Nemar kan oyim." It says here oy. Now it doesn't say oy. Actually, it says o. It says o several times. If you look in the Pnei Moshe brings it down. It says who aid o yada. So how many times say o in the pasuk? It says o twice. So it says oyim here, and it's a fasting Yerushalmi. I didn't look it up in the Bavli, but it says Shavuos on Megillah Beis. I don't remember it's such a Yerushalmi. My mind is a total blank when it comes to Masechta Shavuos, but it's a very interesting Yerushalmi from the word o. I guess because it has two words o. So in Amar oyim b'pikadon, it says o by pikadon as well. And the Pnei Moshe brings down the pasuk. Ma'oyim ma'amuri b'pikadon, just like the oyim which are stated by pikadon, by the object given for safekeeping. Any medaber el b'tfias momon. It's say by you have a monetary claim against the guy. It's not stam testimony, and that's good. What stam testimony is going to become clear later on. Avkan, av oyim amunikat. So it's here where it says, "Oh, ein medaber el b'tfias momon." It's only talking about a monetary claim. Now it says, "Well, wait a minute. How do you know? Maybe it's about testimony about murder, about capital crimes. You know, the DA." The subpoenas the witnesses and they refuse to come, and they take a shvuah status. Maybe it applies to that case as well, which is not a monetary matter, right? What about oyerotzech yochichu? It says by murderers as well. Again, the Pnei Moshe brings down all the O's involved. So sheinim adar mitfilas moment, they're not talking about a monetary claim. So maybe also here it doesn't mean to be the monetary claim. Says Martin, no. There's no mention of oaths. But here we have mentioned an oath, sheish ben shvua, mein sheish ben shvua, and by pikadon, by an object of safekeeping, there's a concept of shvua, right? By chicho oil rotzech, as opposed to the oath stated by murderers, sheinim moim shvua doesn't say anything about a shvua over there. Says more, wait a minute, what about oy soita yochichu? What about the o which it says by soita? Sheyesh moim shvua, where it's taught where there is an oath, the Kohen administers an oath to a sota, and there too it says right? And if that's the case, there's no monetary claim either. So maybe testimony about an Eshes Ish, that's also not monetary. Maybe there's a Shavuos status. What? So leave Ksubah. This from here, we'll talk about that on the base. We learn Oyim which have a Shavuah, and not necessarily administered by a Kohen, because there it's unadministered by base. It's administered by the Kohen. It's a different kind of shvuah. It's not at all the same type of shvuah, right? So therefore, you can't learn our parameters there. By chichu the supposed to it's done by a Kohen. What about oye bitui tzvosayim? What about the korban of bitui tzvosayim? Korban bitui shvuah's bitui, right? It has nothing to do with money. It has to do with whatever I said I did. I said I'm not going to do. I said I'm sorry. I said I did, or I said I did not do. I say I'm going to do. I say I'm not going to do. Not do that with money. So let's start from there. Shame dying to this moment. The Tato about Mater Klim says, talking about her claim, says, Mardanin Oyen, Shawasa Ben Zodan Kishkogo. By both by Shavuos Korban and Shavuos Eidos, even though you intentionally took the Rosh Shavuot, you still have to bring a korban. By Shavuos Bitu, you only bring a korban if you were B'shoyik, because it says Onel Amen, right? We had big Machlokes, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shmuel. What do you forget? You forget Tumas Mikdash Kodosha, or you forget Tumah, forget Mikdash Kodosha. But besides that, there's also, it says by when you bring that korban oil of Yoreit for at Shavuot itself. So you ask me how lama. You have to forget that it's forbidden to take the false oath. So there, it's specifically in a case of shgoga, right? Korban oil of Yoreit for whatever parameters it's brought when there's a ne'elam, when there's a hiddenness, which means there's a shgoga, as opposed to korban pikodon, on Shavuos pikodon, on the Shavuot of an object for safekeeping, and the korban on the Shavuos Eidos, that's brought even if there is the mazit, right? So done it in Shasvem Zodan Kishkoga Me'ayin Kamoisa. The one by Shavuos Eidos, which is even by Mazit, is learned from a similar O by Shavuos Bikara, which is even brought by Mazit. As opposed to the O stated by Bitu Sasayim Shloso Ben Zodan Shkoga, there's no prayer, we don't bring a korban there if you did a B'shoyim. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Kiva says, Yesh Me'ela, it says by Shavuos Eidos Me'ela, from these. So from this we say Yesh Me'ela Chayev, Yesh Me'ela Chayev, Yesh Me'ela Potter. This is an exclusion, it's a mute, right? So how do we learn it? It's a very clipped drush Rabbi Kiva's making, because I don't know how he decided that the exclusion specifically applies the way he wants to apply it. But that's the way it applies. It says Me'ela from these, means only on some things you're liable to make a korban, bring a korban shvuah, and some things not. And he learns it's only on Tfias Mamon, matters which include a monetary claim, not as matters which do not. Okay? Rabbi Shimon says, Chayav Kam Chayav Bikadon, he's liable, he is liable by Bikadon. My Bikadon in Medaber, but he's just learning a Hekesh, not necessarily Yerushalmi even, just a parallel logic. But he's liable, he is liable by Bikadon. My Bikadon in Medaber, Ela B'Tfias Momon, it's about a monetary claim. Afkana in Medaber, Ela B'Tfias Momon, it's about a monetary claim. Aloha, hey, Mashbi'ani Alechem. Same thing. I subpoena witnesses. If you don't come and testify for me, you must take an oath. Sheyesh li biyad ploini. I have in the hands of ploini nezek damages for full damages. Chatzi nezek half damages. Now, a very important name, Moshe. Moshe says the half damages we're discussing here are chatzi nezek tzloiches. Because if it's chatzi nezek of shor tom, then it's a knas. And if a short, you're not chayav a knas. If you're not chayav a knas, a moedib knas is potter. So if later on they come and concede, well, we lied in the oath, they'd be exempt from paying they'd be exempt because there's no penalty when one concedes about a knas. Okay, so it's got to be that they done. Actually, it's forget about that. I just says just strike the record. That was baloney, hogwash. What I meant to say is like this. But they're not. There has to be a tfias mama. Chatzi nezek is not a tfias mama; it's a tfias knas. So therefore, the only chatzi nezek which are tfias mama is throros. When a cow is walking along and it kicks out pebbles, and the pebbles go and hit something, that's chatzi nezek throros. So then on that there's a tfias mama, not a chatzi nezek of a short time. That's knas. Now similarly, tashlumei kefil, v'tashlumei arba chamisha. In that case, there's payment of the keren besides the kefil and arba chamisha. That's what makes it tfias mama. The initial payment of the base sum before he gets to the knas. That's what makes it tfias mama. Sharon has. Ish pleni upitas biti. Now, what about the case of ones? So rape. So or pitui. Or seduction. So Rashi to Moshe says there the keren is there's payment of boshes pgam. Bushel Gam is actually money, as opposed to the rest of the payments which are knas. Talk on the knas, that's not a tfias mamon. And because Kani B'ni, my son hit me, even though he's liable to death, this time about a case where it's a chabura where he's not liable to death penalty, because it didn't draw blood. So in that case, he has to pay money. So that's also a case of tfias mamon. Finally, Shali Kedish B'Yom Kippurim, he ignited my file of grain on Yom Kippur, right? Now, the Yerushalmi is going like the opinion, this mission is going to opinion that you don't say Kilim Rabineh and it's a Kares. Well, now, bear in mind, of course, the guy did it here, but sure, you forgot was Yom Kippur did it. But the Bavli holds that, or not the Bavli, the Gemara Ksuvas holds, both Bavli and Yerushalmi, that there's a possibility that when you're Chayiv, even Kares B'Shogeg, right, which means you're not actually Chayiv Kares, but you transgress an Aver B'Shogeg, which has the Chayiv Kares, then we say Kilim Rabineh. This Gemara clearly doesn't hold that way. Okay? This Mishnah clearly doesn't hold that way. Because Mishnah is going to be Chayiv you to pay on Yom Kippur when you ignited somebody else's grain. Okay, when it says he's a witness about something which he sees or which he knows. So now this is basically a continuation of the previous discussion. He's going to give us a different way of knowing that has to dafka be a tfias momon. It's got to be a monetary claim and not a knas. How so? So Matam it says he's a witness. He knows or he saw, or he saw he knows. It's actually quite a fascinating statement. He says the only time you're liable to say this is if you're involved in testimony, you deny knowing testimony about something which is possible to know or to see. But something which is only possible to know and not to see. So it's only possible to see and not to know. Then there's no Shavuos Eidus on that one. Okay, interesting. What does that mean? So Gemara is going to explain. Says the Gemara, how was there awareness without seeing something in monetary matters? How does it work such a thing? So it says, what's the case? Tenli Masayim Zuz. I say to you, give me 200 Zuz. Sheyesh li biyodcha, which you owe me. Ein lecha biyodi. You deny it. I don't owe you a plug nickel. So below they sleep plenty. So I say, didn't you concede to me, admit to me that you owe me the money in front of Reuven and Shimon, the witnesses? So you say to me, Yomru, let Reuven and Shimon come testify, and I'll give you. In this case, when the witnesses come, they don't know what they're testifying to. They just know that what litigant B conceded to litigant A in front of them. But they never saw the actual catalyst for that liability. That's Yediyah without Re'iyah. They know without having seen it. The Gemara explains. Asubami, Reuven and Shimon, the witnesses come, and they say yes, in the Eidele. All we know is the litigant B did concede to litigant A. The defendant conceded to the plaintiff. Vin the Gazli lay. Gazli is because the defendant stole from the plaintiff. Lays on the Yodin, we don't know if that's the reason. Vin the Osfe lays on the Yodin. We don't know if he borrowed money from him. All we know is that he conceded to him. That's Yediyah, She'eni Mori'iyah, right? They know that something, that the defendant owes the plaintiff, but they have no idea why. Okay, because they didn't see the actual event took place. Now, vice versa, what's Re'iyah below Yediyah? What's the case of Re'iyah without Yediyah? Where the witnesses saw but don't know. So, by money. Hey, Chavir, what's the case? 10 zuz, give me 200 zuz, sheyesh l'chli biyodcha. Give me 200 zuz, which you owe me. The plaintiff says to the defendant. So, ein l'cha biyodi. The defendant says, I don't owe you a thing. Says the plaintiff, didn't I count out to you $200 in front of Reuven and Shimon? That doesn't say why I counted out the $200. And the defendant doesn't say why it was either. The defendant just says, let the Reuven and Shimon come and say this, and I'll pay you back. What did the witnesses see? They saw money exchanging hands, but they have no idea why. That's seeing without knowing. Okay? Atun v'armin, they come and say, in Mona, the witnesses Reuven and Kachim come and say, yes, he counted him out the money. If he counted out the money because he stole from him, because the plaintiff stole from the defendant, lays on the yardin, we don't know if he mishalei. If he counted the money because he's lending the money, lays on it, we don't know. So now, Lamaisa, in this case, of money, there can be a deal without Riyah without Yediyah. But by Knas there can't. Because Knas can never be based on a confession. Because here's where Moed B'Knas is potter. In order for Adam to certify somebody is liable for a Knas, they must see the incident. They can't know based on the confession of the defendant. Because had everything been based on the defendant's confession, then we would say he's potter from Knas, because he was Moed B'Knas. And somebody who concedes on a Knas is exempt from paying that Knas. Do you see that? So that's why it has to dafka be a tfias mama. So it's something where the testimony can be based on Yediyah without Riyah, or Riyah without Yediyah. Because who ate o yodah. But if it can only be based on Riyah, not in Yediyah, a witness in such a case is not liable for Shavuos Eidus. Okay, that's what Gemara is saying.
What in the case of he saw the counting?
What?
This is one of the witnesses saw the counting, so that's Riyah without.
He did. They don't know why he counted the money. So in that case, the defendant said, "You know what? If you bring the witnesses that you counted out the money, I'll pay you." Yeah. So, or the witnesses don't know why he counted out the money. All they testify is they saw the count. It's entirely possible the count was because actually the plaintiff owed the money, the defendant money, and he was counting the money which he owed him. But the defendant put himself in a situation stupidly on his part, where he said, if you bring the witnesses, I'll actually pay you. So there the witnesses are testifying on seeing without knowing what they were seeing.
Right, so that also doesn't apply. It does.
Yes. Because no. Well, how would that have anything to do with Knas? It only applies to the moment. Knas wouldn't be Shayach, right? Knas would only be a one-way street. Okay? Says the Gemara, now, Tani Knas Biti. A guy says, give me the Knas of my daughter, Shubiyadcha, which you owe me, okay? Because you seduced my daughter, you raped my daughter, you owe me money, okay? Vuamei says, I'm sorry, Lo Nischavti Knas. He says, I'm not Chayiv Knas B'yom. I never was liable to a Knas. It's a lie. They said the Adam testified that he is liable to a Knas. We don't know in Knas Barte, in Knas Isa Uchre. If he's liable for a Knas for having paid for his daughter, for his daughter, for having raped this guy's daughter, or for some other woman, and actually the Pshat Yisrael changes it to Milsa Uchre. It's Chayiv Knas for something else, such as he smote this guy's Eved and killed him, then it's Chayiv Knas of 30 shkolim, 30 shloshim zuz, right? So now, in this case, this is unique to Yerushalmi. Your Sameach points out this. The Yerushalmi holds that that also this is subject to Shavuos Eidus. This is a case of Knas. So the Yerushalmi has a subtle difference of the Bavli. The Bavli doesn't have the response of the defendant in the Chabiyadi. Or Lo Nischavti Knas Me'olam. The moment the defendant says, I deny it, then it actually changes it from a case of Knas to a case of Mammon. At that point. Okay? So the Yerushalmi actually is bringing out a scenario in which there can be Shavuos Eidus and Knas. Because if the defendant responded before the Edom were called to the scene, I deny it, En Chabiyadi Klum or En Chabiyadi Knas, at that point it changes from Yerushalmi's perspective from a case of true Knas, in which case the Edom there would be no case of Shavuos Eidus, to a case of money. Okay? Because now he's to exclude himself from the capacity to be a moed b'knas. He denied it when he was charged. So at that point already, the Yerushalmi holds, once he's huchsa kafra, once he put himself in the category of denying the claim, now it becomes susceptible to Shavuos Eidus. Okay? It's no longer a knas, right? It's not necessarily disagreeing with the Bible. It's just the Bible never came out to such a case, right? Okay. That similar case. Anasto pitito is biti. I'm not sure what the difference is between the previous case and this case, but you raped the sus my daughter. I never raped or seduced a woman in my life. Him and the witnesses testify, Shanas Isha, that he raped a woman. We don't know which one. We saw him raping in Central Park. We don't know which woman he was raping, right? We don't know in Barte Ava, he's a chore. It was this guy's daughter or somebody else's, somebody else's daughter. Similarly, Arakta Shori, you kill now. This is actually a different case. Arakta Shori. It's a play on the same case. Variation on the theme. Harakta Shori. You killed my ox. Kitzatzin Nitiyosai. You cut down my saplings. Vorme any day says, I don't know. Now here it should say actually the Va'edim Me'idim also the Sharter saw Pnei Moshe Bo say Va'edim Me'idim also Shara V'Katzitz. The witnesses testify that he did cut down, or he did kill. So he's chayiv, he's liable. However, Ata Marta, what if he responds differently? And again, we're off on a tangent now. Ata Marta, the defendant says, you told me, Larog, you told me I could kill your ox. Or Li Lokut, you told me I could chop down your cherry tree, right? So in that case, Hochin Achar, here it says, Rovan Etios. Most of the saplings. But the Sharter is so based on the Tosaf that changed it to Achra Taina. We would look at his claim, in other words, his excuse. Both yourselves could work. It works either way. Ma'ochin Achra Rovan Etios, what does it mean to go after most of the saplings, or Ochin Achra Taina? Or Rabbi Chagai said, "In have a toile nachon." If his ox is known to be a gorer, so nachonu marle we have to turn nachonu marle. We say Mistami did tell him to kill the ox because he doesn't want an ox around. It's going to be a gorer. Now, even though normally enochim b'momon acharov, we normally don't follow the majority by the moments, right? So even if it's ox is nachon, maybe some minority people who likes leaving goring oxes around, he likes the pit bulls. So nevertheless, since there's the Yerushalmi, I think says since there's a Rov people want to kill their oxen if they are gorers, and besides that, this guy is a cheskas moment that he's potter, right? Right, and he's claiming I don't have to pay because you told me to kill the ox, right? You told me to kill him, right? So therefore, the rov that most people want to kill a goring ox, and the chazaka, this guy who's holding out to his money, he claims that he's potter, he doesn't have to pay. Similarly, if his saplings were idle, right? So most people want to chop down their idle saplings. So therefore, the time is legitimate. Who Marley Mistoma told him to cut it down. Now, Amar Rabbi said, now this is how to learn this next mark. It's a subject of a vast dispute. The way the most unfortunate learners, the way it's written here, Ein Oimer b'mamon me'achar, which literally means you don't say migo by dinim mominus. Me'achar is the Hebrew equivalent of the word migo. Migo means since in Aramaic. Me'achar would be the Hebrew term. Now, actually, this appears a couple of places in the Yerushalmi, and it's an amazing sheet. The Yerushalmi actually discussed at some length there that Yerushalmi also don't say migo by Molon. Migo is not a valid claim by Molon. Even to hold on to money, you can't say migo, right? You don't say so. If the case of migo over here would be to say, let's say he said, I didn't cut down your trees. I did not chop down your cherry trees. So he has a migo. What could he have tied it? He could have tied it. You told me to. So we believe him that he didn't chop him down. Migo that he could have claimed that you told me to. So according to Yerushalmi, no, you don't say Miko. There's no, by Bavli old, of course you say Miko. It comes out to be a major machlekes and shitas between the Bavli and Yerushalmi, whether you'd say Miko by Dini Momentous or not. Okay? So the Shaita Yisrael, however, changes the gears of the Gemara to make it not that way. He changes the gears like this. It says, like, changes it quite simply. It says, Ein oimer at kain. You don't say, in a case where he argues, it says, you don't say this. Okay? He says that you don't say that, don't look at his taina. Why is that we don't like looking at his taina? So he says, Me'achar du yochil meimar lei, I'm sorry. In Oimar Kain, sorry, I made a mistake. Gurlei so reads it like this, is not Ain, but rather in. If Oimar Kain, if you say this way, then you can say Migo. Then you could say the following Migo. In other words, the way the Or Sameach, the others learned, it said, Ein Oimer b'mamon me'achar. You don't say by money amigo. But the way the Shaita Yisrael learns, he says, in Oimer at Kain, if you're going to say this way, this svore, that he can say, look at Rov Natios, so look at my taina. Since he could say, you told me to kill it and chop it down. Even though he says, I didn't chop it down, I didn't kill it, butter is exempt. Why? Because we do say migo. So the way the Shaita Yisrael says in our argument is saying, you do say migo. That since he could have said, you told me, he's believing him, he said he didn't do it. According to the way the conventional way of learning, it's the exact opposite, which is, you don't say migo, and therefore he cannot say that I didn't kill it or I didn't chop it down because it doesn't have the migo. So the passage is that to learn like this, so you like the Shaita Yisrael, that it's going with a migo. Now they both, all the Farshim say that there are two other places in the Yerushalmi, and the Yerushalmi says, Ein omer ad b'mamon me'achar, but one of them is later in Shavuos, so let's wait to deal with them till we get there. Okay, so now, here really should be the end of the middle of Halacha Hey, says, where it says, Halacha Vav, I'm sorry, it says, Leisa da pliga reish lakish. You see that 4 lines before the next Mishnah. You see that 4 lines before the next Mishnah? Says more Leisa da, I don't understand. Says more Leisa da pliga reish lakish. When it says here in our Mishnah that Amali Kedisha Shechaver B'Yom Kippur is potter. For a karetz, what do you do? What do you get if you did a karetz meza? What penalty do you get? Malchus, right? So isn't it like our Mishnah? Domer ain't mammon etzel Malchus. Reish Lakish holds there's no money where there's Malchus involved. There's no money, right? Even if you did b'shoigeg, Reish Lakish holds we hold it ain't like a mishalim if you get like Malchus mamish. It'd be amazing. Reish Lakish holds only if you, even if you did b'shoigeg, but theoretically if it's susceptible to Malchus, you're already potter from pain. So our current mission says Malik Kedisha Shochaver B'Yom Kippurim. There's a tvias moment. She potter. So that's Mar's question, right? So it says our mission is going to grab Meir to Amar Loikum Mishalim. And Meir Shita is Loikum Mishalim. Our mission is going like that Shita, and therefore there is a tvias moment even if it's susceptible to Malchus. Now, Allah Abba. Mashpia Ne'aleichem. This is a case where it's not a tvias moment. I make you take a shvuah, that you should come testify. Shani Koyen! Come testify that I'm a Koyen. Shani Levi! Shani Ben Grusha! I'm not the son of a divorcee. Shani Ben Chlutza of a kosher Koyen. She's playing Koyen, or that Yankel's a Koyen. She's playing Levi, so Yankel's a Levi. Shani Ben Grusha, Shani Ben Chlutza, Ben Grusha, Ben Chlutza. Shanas ish playing Pita's Biti. Or you come to ask to demand that testimony is seduction, where there is no boshus b'kam. Shechava b'ibni, where there's a chiyah misa. Shedisha b'shabbos, where it's given the rabbi minay. These are not tvias moment arei lupturim. All these cases, it's exempt. Now, Rabbi say, everybody, the last 3 lines in the next halacha, everybody goes crazy. Look at this long ribaz, long like the goals over here. Nobody understands what's going on with them. Because they didn't know Pshat. Why didn't they know Pshat? Because they thought that those three lines belong where they do. But it's a mistake. It's clear to me. Those three lines, just like the three lines of before that, I placed at the end of Halacha A, and I'm not the only one to do that. Plenty of other people do that. Those three lines at the end belong at the beginning of this halacha. Okay, so let's read them first. This is my chiddush, but I think it's true. Says more, this is really your question from before. What about the ksuva? Right? It's the same thing. If I say a guy's a kohen or not a kohen, there's a lot of money riding on that, right? What money's riding on that? Trumas, Meiser, all sorts of things riding on that. Right? Came at that law of a boy meitan lay, since the guy is supposed to have given him trumas and meises, whatever it is, below yoiv lay commission sidam mammon. Right? It's not giving them the trumas and meises. It says I have some mammon. Should fias mammon. So now we go back to the beginning of halacha. No. Nevish kisechta l'gzeira shava. That's why we have gzeira shava by Shavuos Ha'edus and Shavuos Pikadon. Nevish kisechta. Ma nevish kisechta shneimar la'ala tvias mamon v'yeshlo. When I come and I say, you have my object for safekeeping, there's an immediate demand. A demand on money which is actually in play at the moment. Meaning yeshlo, I'd say, you right now have money which you owe me, right? You have money which is the object I gave for safekeeping. So to here, it's got to be that there's money in play. Yes, it's true. Of course, there's potential loss here, but that's not money in play right now. The trumas and meisos, which are not in potential play right now. So therefore, lemaisa, it's not immediate tvias mamon. Same thing by a soita and a ksuba. The ksuba is not that topic of discussion. That'll be a ramification, but right now it's not topic of conversation. Therefore, that doesn't count. So even though it concerns money in the long run, it's got to be shorter. Reb Yitzchak Ochanan asked the question: What about now? If it's a kohen out of Peter Naben, and somebody runs and says we're not a kohen, right? And he's looking for Adam to get to testify as a kohen, so you get the money Peter Naben. Is that not imminent to be a moment? So the Ori Yosha says, but it's not. I mean, Yosha makes it by things, but it's not. It's my point, which is that that's a poil yotze. It's a ramification. It's not the direct issue, even though it looks like it's a direct issue. Direct issue is whether it's a kohen or a levi, whether this woman's a soita. The ramification is loss of trumas, loss of meises, loss of pignan ben. That's not like Shavuos HaPikadon, where the actual issue is substantial and tangible at the moment. Okay? So that's why it's not comparable. Okay?
Because the Shavuos HaPikadon is a tangible piece of money.
Somebody made me a promise. Give me $200. You know what promises are worth in halacha, right? Right? Below nothing, and he give it to me. Their exam for Shavuos Ha'edus, right? The Gemara is going to explain the reason. But then Moshe says, based on the previous Gemara, the Gemara is going to explain in the next Gemara. It's not, you definitely not Shavuos because, like the previous Gemara, which explained Moshe's idea, but rather the Gemara itself is going to explain momentarily. She'ein chayovin el al Shavuos mama can be kodon. It has to be like Bikodon, right? Which would sound, well, actually here it says like Bikodon. All right, but the one is going to give a different reason as well, or a variation of the Mashbi'ani alechem she'alechem kshetenu li'edus. I'd make anticipatory shvur. I'd make it take a shvur that when you know testimony for me, that you should kshetenu li'edus should devote to iduni, that you should come and testify for me. I will return they're exempt. Because in that case, as we said previously, that's no good because the shvur came prior to the testimony. Actually, we talked about korban before, but here's the same idea. The shvur has to be at the time when there's edus emed al perek, something right now, not preemptory. If a guy stood up in shul Amar, he said, "Mashbi'ani alechem, I make you all take an oath. If you know testimony for me, should evolve with the iduni, that you should come testify to me. Harei Lupturim, they're all exempted. Why? The Gemara is going to discuss it some length. Rabbi Yaakov bar Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yaakov bar Safti, Rabbi Avo b'Shem Rabbi Yochanan Omar, Lite matana l'chaveichoi. If somebody promised to give a matana to his friend in Bikesh Lachzor and he wants to renege, Lachzor bo chayzer, he can renege. So the Gemara asks the same question in Haba Metzia. Rabbi Yaakov is Safti, Bo Kum Rabbi Avo. Rabbi Yaakov is Safti asked in front of Rabbi Avo when Rabbi Avo said the statement. V'ahin ahin is this hin lo b'tzedeki v'hin tzedek? Well, it says hin tzedek and lav hin tzedek. We dash in several places in Bab and Yerushalmi when you say hin tzedek, it means a just measure. When you say hein, when you say yes, it's got to be b'tzedek. When you say lo, also it's b'tzedek. In other words, you got to keep your word. What happened to keeping your word? Says the Gemara. So the keeping your word should be binding. As Ma'arma says, he meant to keep his word. A word is not a Kenyan, right? He meant to keep his word, and he gave his word trustfully. Later he broke his word, but that word is not binding in the long run. Now, the truth is that the Yasha brings down from the Yerushalmi and Metzia, which says that if you promised a poor person, then it becomes a neder. But if you promised a rich person, it's only a promise, and therefore it's even if you promise a poor person in the neder, it still would not be considered tfias mamon that there would be Shavuos Eidus. Now, going to the next part of Mishnah, Lama. When you get up and shul, give a claim. Let's say anybody knows testimony to me for me has to testify, otherwise I have to take a shul. So they're all exempt. Why? They're all exempt even if they lie in the Shavuos Eidus. Why is that? So it says, because he doesn't know who his witnesses are, because he's got to know. When he comes over to Reuven and Shimon, he has to know Reuven and Shimon know testimony from me, and he subpoenas them specifically. And here it's just subpoenaing everybody in the shul. Or do we say, or is it because he doesn't direct himself at any specific group of people? Nafkamina is if he doesn't know, if he comes over to Reuven and Shimon and says, I don't know if you know testimony from me, but you have to take a shvuah. So there he's not Yodea by him, but he is Mechavin to them. He doesn't know there's no testimony for him, but he's Mechavin to make them take an oath. So are they liable in that case for taking Shavuos Eidus falsely? It turns out the doctor didn't know Eidus, or are they not liable? That's a Gemara's ramification, right? So it says the Gemara, Mishum She'eni Yodea by him, Mishum She'eni Meskavin. What's the difference? Mashkan Shtaim Shtaim, if he takes two by two. So he still doesn't know, but he's mechavin to them, right? You think now he knows by them? He doesn't know them either. Have a lace time or so it must be that the reason is that because he's not mechavin to them, right? In other words, because it says in the Gemara, must be that the reads of the Gemara is actually going to explain it better after the next mission. So let's leave it till then. So it must do that to a kavanah, not with the idea. So that's until the next halach, then it become clear. Halachas. But a person says too much. If you know testimony from me now, he doesn't know if they know testimony. It says if you know. Right, so here you see clearly, should come testify for me. They know testimony for him, but they don't know real testimony for him. They only know Eid Mi, they know by hearsay. They heard from somebody else. Or they knew, but one of them was a Korab apostle. And you can't testify any Harei L'Pturim. They're Potter. Now here it's quite clear. And Rabbi Mana learned out from this case. The previous case is not so clear. This case said if you go to a shul and you say to everybody, Mashbi'ani Aleichem. So they're all Potter, right? So we said it must be that it's because of not miskavin, right? Because you didn't have in mind two specific people. That's what we said. But it could be where Enachami you came to two people and you said, I don't know, but I'm mechavin for you guys. I know if you guys know. I'm mechavin, you two guys should take the shul. Could be in that case they're liable. But the Gemara didn't have any conclusive evidence from the previous Mishnah. But here the Gemara has conclusive evidence. Look at this. It says, says the only reason why these guys are off the hook is because they're Korban Apostle, not because he didn't know. He doesn't know if they know evidence or not. But he comes and he says, I don't know, but take a shvuah. So why are they off the hook with their shvuah? Only because one of them is a Korban Apostle. Only because they know the testimony by hearsay. But if they knew testimony legitimately, and they took the shvuah, even though he didn't know that they knew. So they're liable for the shvuah seidus, right? Did he know about them? Did he know that they knew? He took a chance. It must be that the only time they're off the hook is if he didn't have kavanah for them, like in a big shul. But if he had kavanah for these specific people, he cost them 2 by 2. They're talking liable for shul as edus.
They're all taking a community shul. The whole shul is taking.
Taka wouldn't work.
Right.
Wouldn't work. Rabbi Yossi Shamla Mikan Mesa. Rabbi Yossi learned out from the case we had 2 cases ago. He says, if I take a preemptory shvuah, right? It said, swear, if you ever know edus from me, you have to come. And I want you to take an oath now that if you ever know edus from me, you'll come, right? And they take an oath, right? So it says there they're exempt, because, why does it say they're exempt? Why is the shvuah not mechayin their korban? Because the shvuah preceded the edus. They didn't know edus at the time. So the minei kadma shvuah edus. So it sounds like a lo kadma shvuah edus chayavin. If the shvuah had not preceded the edus, they would be liable. But again, did he know? No, it was a peremptory thing, right? So he didn't know if they knew. So yet it says the only do it is because it's peremptory. But if it hadn't been peremptory, so therefore they'd be liable. I didn't know. It must be the whole thing is contingent whether he intends them or not, but not on whether he knows if they know or has a suspicion that they know or not. Halachas. If the plaintiff sent the message to a slave that they have to take a shvuah, he's subpoenaing them to a slave. Or the defendant said, I make it take shvuah if you know testimony for the plaintiff. They should come and testify for him. They're exempt. It's got to be the plaintiff subpoenaing them for the plaintiff's testimony. Both. The only shvuah saying is that the plaintiff subpoenas, he must be the one subpoenas, for testimony on his own behalf. You need that double whammy in order for them to be liable. Okay? So says the Gemara, it says, Matam Lomer. I don't know about it. It says, Im lo yagid, v'nosavano. Now that lo actually is written Lamed Vav Aleph, although it doesn't appear that way in the Gemara, but that's the way it's written. In lo yagid Lamed Vav Aleph. And we dash in that, because lo was always written Lamed Vav and Lamed Aleph, right? We dash like this. It should be actually, I think, lo with a vav, then lo with an aleph. In other words, it's a word missing here, Lamed Vav. Lamed Vav, Lamed Aleph, mi pia tovea. It means that they lo, if for him, lo yagid, that's what he dashed it. If for him, he shall not testify, right? So im lo means for him, because it's spelled Lamed Vav. So for him, for whom? For the plaintiff. Lo, Lamed Aleph, shall not yagid. So for the plaintiff, they shall not speak, then they bear the sin. So that's what he dash, because the extra vav. So he dash in the word lo, as if it's written lo, him, and lo, not. So for him, they shall not testify, then they bear their sin. So it's for the tovea. Now, that's Masnisa Tzrich L'Madamar Rabbi Lezer. Our mission requires that Rabbi Lezer said, do they start davening yet? Can you go check if the guy's still saying a shiur? Masnisa Tzrich L'Madamar Rabbi Lezer, Madamar Rabbi Lezer Tzrich Masnisa. We both. Iltim looked out of Rabbi Lezer. If we would have just learned a mission, not know what Rabbi Lezer said, he said, Yishmu Piyatoveh, they've got to hear, our Mishnah tells us that who's got a subpoena. Tells us who's got a subpoena, the Toveh's got a subpoena. But doesn't tell us who he's subpoenaing for. be subpoenaing them as hostile witnesses for the defendant. So our mission says they've got to hear from they got to hear the subpoena from the toveh. But it should be v'nishbu. It says you have v'lo sharter, so it could be the nishbu and the nitpa. Could be if the shvu has to do with the defendant, they'd still be chayvin. Rabbi Eliezer tells that their shvua is actually on behalf directed for the has to be for the plaintiff. In lo yakid, if the plaintiff they will not say. And Tanya Rabbi Eliezer, vice versa, which is Rabbi Eliezer's point. Lo tzin and wouldn't learn the Mishnah. Hamar would have said you should be a niv. It doesn't matter who subpoenas them, as long as nishbul and tovea. Actually, I now understand what it says. What? There's still the middle shiur. Okay, good. V'lo nishbul. Oh, they finished the shiur? Everybody's just sharing this movie. Okay, v'lo nishbu la tovea, and they didn't take the shvua for the tovea, chayovin. In other words, that even though as long as the shvua is for the plaintiff, it doesn't matter who subpoenaed them. So that's why it doesn't matter who subpoenas. And it matters who they're not testifying for. It's got to be both that the plaintiff subpoenas them, and that the shvua they're not taking is the shvua the edus they're not giving, and the shvua that they're making is one which has to do with the toveh as well. Okay? Mashbi'ani aleichem. I make it take an oath. Matzavani aleichem. I command upon you. Osrechem ani. All these languages are relu chayovin. They're all languages which are liable for shvua. B'shemayim v'oretz. For heavens and earth. Harelu P'tur, and that's not a language of a shvua. Baal of Dalad, Yud K, B'Shakai, B'Tzvokos, B'Chanun, B'Rachum, B'Erech Apayim, Rav Chesed, Kol Kinim uses any shame or any description of God to raise a chayav. That's the language of shvua. Similarly, Amakala B'Kulin, if you curse some of those names, chayav, you're liable, Divrei Meir. Chaim Pocher and Chaim say it's got to be by klola, it's got to be dafka, it's got to be dafka by klola. It's got to dafka be one of the names of God and not a description of God. By a shvua, they concede even a description of God comprises shvua. But by a curse, it's got to be the name of God. Hamakal avi v'imo b'kulon. And if you curse not a Kodesh Baruch Hu, but if you curse your father and mother with any name or description, Chayav Dirmeir, Chaim Pachar Chaim say again, you have to use specifically the name of God. Hamakal atzon v'chavero b'kulon. If you curse yourself and your friend with them, oiver below saseh. It's not a capital crime like cursing your father, but you transgress a lo saseh. Yakikolokim. If you say, may God smite you, so God should smite you. Zui ola ksuba b'Torah. That is a curse as described as the Torah defines a curse. If you say, al yakikol, may God not smite you if you didn't do A. Yivrechcha v'yetiv loch, may God not smite you if you didn't do, may God bless you or give good to you if you didn't do A. But the inference is, may God smite you if you didn't do A. So the Rameir says that's a language of shvua or klola. Why? Because the Rameir says infers. You always do inferences. For Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says we never make inferences. In order for something to be considered a shvua or klola, it's got to be straight up. Otherwise, it's not considered to be shvua or klola. Okay? Mashbiani alechem stam. Chayav. I really want to finish the parak tonight, but I'm not going to be able to do it. But I wanted to. If you guys had come on time tonight, we would have finished the parak. Mashbiani alechem stam. If a person, if he makes you take an oath generically, chayav is liable. Asrechem ani, kovalchem ani, and it should be mitzvah ani, kulam ein chayovim. All these cases, you're not liable. Okay, this is actually changing our Mishnah. It should be. I know. I'm just doing 3 words of Shai Torah Eretz Yisrael. He says he says in those cases you're not liable because they're not considered to be valid forms of shvua. All right, Lamaisa just goes on and on. We'll stop here and come back and we'll start the Mishnah. The Gemara again tomorrow night.